Welcome to the Lessons from the Leap podcast, where we showcase visionary entrepreneurs and leaders, sharing their incredible journeys and inspiring stories. Let's dive into the show.
Hello and welcome to Lessons from the Leap. I'm your host, Gazanfer Mansoor. On this show, I get to sit down with entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders to talk about the bold decisions, pivotal moments, and innovative ideas that shaped their journey. This episode is brought to you by Technology Rivers. At Technology Rivers, we bring innovation through technology and AI to solve real-world industry problems. A big part of our focus is healthcare, where we work with health tech companies to build secure, HIPAA-compliant software products. If you'd like to learn more about us, head over to technologyrivers.com and tell us more about your project. Today on Lesson on Leap, we are joined by Sheryle Gillihan, CEO and co-founder of CauseLabs. So, Joe, welcome to the show. I'll let you introduce yourself. Let us know where you started, where you are, where you're heading. So take your time.
Thank you, Gazanfer. So I have been in technology for a pretty long time, primarily because I grew up when, people were first getting email addresses and getting onto AOL and learning technology on things like GeoCities and learning how to break sites so that we could build sites. So I've been in it for a minute. And even before that, I was in computer science classes and AutoCAD classes. Interestingly, despite all of that, I never thought I'd end up in technology. I thought technology was one of those things, one of those skills that everybody just had to know. And so I did not ever aspire to be a business owner or to be a tech company owner for that. So I probably wanted to be something like a teacher as I was growing up, one of those more traditional jobs. And my mother probably wanted me to be a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer, which is pretty typical of Asian parents. So I grew up in the Philippines and then moved around quite a bit because my father was in the military. Ended up in Fort Worth, Texas. He retired here and met the love of my life here and had our children here. So this is as close to home as it gets for someone whose roots are all over the world. Starting off in tech, I actually was a translator in the military, and then I ended up at a small due diligence, mergers and acquisitions tech company startup. And was with them for several years, and then ended up at CauseLabs through an ad on Craigslist, if you can believe it. And my husband found it for me and said, this blends all of your skills. I think it'd be perfect for you. And it ended up, being so perfect that several years later, we bought the company. So I've had a very varied background, and I could say that, probably didn't plan any of it. But it's perfect the way it is.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. And good reminder about the Craigslist. I don't know if that still exists, but there was a time when we all were always on Craigslist finding or sharing. That was a good time. So I feel like that's a change, no big change. So what was the personal moment or realization that pulled you away from corporate towards the purpose-driven work?
That's a really great question. So as I mentioned, I was, dealing with mergers and acquisitions, and those never sleep. I mean, I was taking calls in the middle of the night from China, and just helping with the due diligence process, as well as kind of the organization of the due diligence data rooms and the tech side of that. So part of it was probably sanity and making sure that I could actually sleep a full night's sleep. And so I do think that it was also shifting my own moral fiber. It was kind of shifting and not aligning so well with the values of who I thought I was and who I wanted to be and aspired to be. The business world, especially the corporate business world, doesn't always have a lot of empathy. And I think it does now more so than it ever has before. But the climbing of the corporate ladder and the chasing of titles was really shifting who I was. And I think I was raised to do that. Raised to know that there were always opportunities, raised to believe in the American dream. But the American dream has shifted a lot since technology entered the picture. Um, and the world is different now. And so I kind of was shaped alongside some of those shifts and recognizing that it could be different. I didn't recognize it right away because I needed the title and I needed the control and I needed the stability in my income. But I think it was my husband, actually, Michael, who found the job on Craigslist and said, I this is aligned with everything that you have learned. It was, the very first project at CauseLabs was a scripture translation project. And so my military experience with translation and understanding cultures was a really important piece of that project. My faith and everything that I have been raised to believe aligned with that project. My experience with technology aligned with that project. My project management and skills with mergers and acquisitions and due diligence and risk assessment really aligned with that project. And so even though it was, a demotion in title to project manager, a pay cut, a huge shift in risk in our life going with a company that had, hundreds of clients to a company that had two, um, there was something about it that just really aligned with what I wanted in my life. And I don't know that I questioned it at the end. I questioned it a lot at the beginning, and we had multiple interviews because I think I was interviewing them as much as they were interviewing me. But by the end, it was like, I can't imagine not having this job. They have to hire me. And through the work with CauseLabs, we weren't CauseLabs at the time. I helped the company rebrand. We were High Def Inc. And High Def Web Solutions before that. I think that just the team that we had around us, we had very shared values. The clients that we had shared values, and it was just a recognition that a blueprint of a company could look a little bit different. And soon after that, we discovered B Lab, who does the B Corp certification. And our company was headquartered out of Denver, and they were headquartered out of Boulder. And so we got to really experience that locally as an organization and what was happening and moving in Colorado as well as in other states. And that picture of what a social enterprise was and what a for-profit, for-good company was really appealed to me. And so I helped the company kind of move in that direction alongside our leadership, who was very supportive of it and recognized that this is what we wanted to be as a company.
Thanks for sharing that. So while we are on CauseLabs, so can you dig in a bit more, share what CauseLab do currently, and then also I can maybe ask us separately, but I want to learn more about the B Corp. Obviously, there's a reason you did it. For anybody listening, what are the benefits? Why should a company be about B Corp?
Sure, good
So let's
question.
divide it into two. Yeah. So let's go with the first one,
Absolutely.
CauseLabs.
So CauseLabs is a web agency. And, of course, at the base level, that means that we build websites, we maintain websites, we offer support and strategic advice and guidance on digital technology. But I would say at its core, we are really a strategy company and a steward of someone's investments. We do work with a lot of nonprofits, which is kind of in our branding, in our name, but that doesn't mean we only work with nonprofits. We work with corporations, for profits. We have enterprise level solutions. We have primarily been a custom development firm. So while in 2003, we started as a a website agency. By 2008, we had grown into a mobile application builder. And then, by 2010, 2011, we were doing complex database systems, custom APIs. And we have just really evolved as an organization as technology has evolved. By 2015, we stopped doing mobile apps because the majority of people we recognized did not need to invest in a mobile application. But certain services do. I expect my healthcare provider, for example, to maybe have a mobile app where I can do some things offline, or connect with other applications within their system to get data and reports and log my own things in there, see my appointments, those sorts of things. I expect my bank to have an app. But the local nonprofit that I am interfacing with, or maybe a brand that I'm shopping with, that I buy things from on a regular basis, I don't expect them to have an app anymore. I do expect interaction, and I think everybody does these days. Like if a website is just a website sharing their basic business card information, then it's probably not serving their organization the best way that it can. And so to have customers and loyalty, a lot of times these days, it requires interaction. And the question is, what is it? What's the service that your organization really offers to people, and how do you want them interacting with you? The challenge with that sometimes is the expectation from an organization side of like, well, I want them to interact with me every single day for 8 hours a day. I'm like, no, that's only your employees that are going to be in the back end working with your systems. We do want to make it easy for them, but most of your customers are going to be, reaching out when they need you. And so sometimes that's daily, sometimes that's weekly, sometimes that's twice a year. And understanding that and giving the right capabilities is an important piece of that. And it's different for every single organization. And so when I said we mostly did custom work, it was really understanding those behaviors and nuances and building the right tools so that people didn't invest in things that weren't necessary. That said, the world has changed again just in recent years with the adoption of AI. And so we're looking at that evolution too, and understanding those behaviors and helping our clients kind of stay ahead of that. I don't believe that every company is going to be an AI company, but I do believe that every company is eventually going to interface with AI in some way, and utilize it either internally for their team, or externally with their clients. But understanding that you don't need all of your clients' time, all of your clients' data. You just need what makes sense for that relationship to be strong and healthy, is a big piece of it. And part of that, being a steward, is why we became a B Corp. And that aligns very, very well with, being good for the world, good for the environment, good for the community. And also, understanding who you are as a company. I think that our team being really supportive of it helped us move in that direction, because we were already doing the right things. We already had the right values. We were already collecting a lot of information. But becoming B Corp certified, it's harder than you think. Like there is a lot of accountability, I would say, in the certification process, just as any certification. HIPAA compliance, for example, there's a lot of accountability to working on those sorts of projects, as you know. I would say that we continue to learn as an organization the areas in which we want to grow. And so if somebody is interested in becoming B Corp certified or becoming a public benefit corporation, the interest in being a good company is kind of the first step. The learning how to be a better company is kind of the ongoing step. Like we constantly are being evaluated, taking that assessment every 3 years, measuring our impact. And we learn things like, for example, woman-owned company. My husband and I own it together, but I hold the majority of shares, and obviously support other women-owned companies in theory, in concept of I support this, I like this. But when it came time to making decisions for hiring different vendors, making different purchases, even like where we buy our t-shirt swag, we weren't asking that question of, are we hiring women-owned companies? Are we working with women-owned developers and designers externally with our company? And our measurement was 3%. So you can't improve what you don't measure. And we recognize that even though we support that and we believe in that, we weren't obviously supporting it with our decisions. And so it helped us change. It helped us identify the types of companies that we wanted to work with, working locally and working with organizations that align with the things that we believe in. So becoming a B Corp, the advantages are more internal than they are external. It's probably good for recruiting, and you hire the right people who already align with your values. But very rarely is it a lead magnet. I would say yes, generally speaking, most people care now where their dollars are going. But they're not looking on the B Corp site to find a vendor for their website or their web application. Some are, and we've gotten a few inquiries in that, but it's not the typical lead gen magnet.
Oh, wow. So many nuggets in just one answer. Wow. So starting with the focus part, you're moving away from mobile. Obviously, companies like ours who focus on that part, obviously those are the one that comes in as a partner. But I think it's important to figure out what are your core strengths and not going thinner everywhere. So yeah, you figured that out quickly. And that's a natural. Everybody wants to do everything because the customers are asked. And we have been asked many times on marketing, for example. We build it. Okay, do you do any of that? No, we can't because you can do everything as a technical people, but are you expert in it? No. Yeah. And then you touched on AI part. So that's another big thing. We'll go deeper on that later. But I think that's impacting every business, every company. And then I think the benefits of B Corp for sure. So yeah, that's some of the nuggets. Yeah, I do agree that uh, many time it may not be a lead magnet, but there are people who focus on the impact and they only want to work with you if you are creating different, and it's a win-win situation.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. No, thanks for sharing that. That's so glad. So at some stage you acquired a company.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk more about that? What was that? How did that happen? What was that thing?
So at this point, we've done two acquisitions. The first acquisition I mentioned earlier, I was a project manager in CauseLabs and eventually grew in that position, ended up on the leadership team, was later asked to be the CEO of the company. And the opportunity came up when the owner was ready to sell. This is the original owner from 2003. I joined the company in 2010. In 2018, he approached me. He was ready to sell the company. And for us, it was an easy yes at that point. My husband was already a business owner in the tech space, and we have very aligning businesses. The different, in fact, he contracted with CauseLabs for several years. I think the big difference is he focused mostly on local organizations, and CauseLabs was very much a global organization and a national organization. We've done a lot of work all over the world, but we hadn't done any work locally. And so when we acquired CauseLabs as a family, he became co-owner with me, and the decision came down to which brand is the strongest brand. Do we keep them separate from one another? Do we merge the two organizations together? We ended up merging them because there was enough differences there that we could combine and do those two separate things still. And we decided that CauseLabs had the stronger brand. It had more domain authority. It had more kind of outward news. And it was already an established brand that was starting to be recognized. It was even being recognized kind of in the WordPress space, which we did a lot of WordPress work with his agency. And so yeah, it was just a decision of, how do we structure this as business owners and as a family? And then a few years later, actually after the pandemic caused a lot of shifts as well in consumer expectations as well as in technology. And there was a bit of disruption there for sure. But a few years after that, we acquired a reporting organization, a reporting plugin, and it's called WP Client Reports. And so that has been integrated into CauseLabs since we were already doing maintenance and ongoing services for our clients. That was just a layer of it. It was a tool that we were actually using. And again, the owner of that was ready to sell, and we approached them and asked them if they would consider selling to us. And so that's something that we have been building up for several years now. We've always wanted to have kind of a product under our umbrella, because being just a services company is really challenging. But what you were talking about with focus, we're recognizing it's really hard to be focused on services and focused on products. And so I would say that Michael is kind of the owner of the product side of things. I'm kind of the owner of the services side of things. And even now we're evaluating, what does that structure look like for our family? And are these truly two separate businesses? Did we merge them for convenience and ease? But they don't speak the same language. They don't have the same audience. We're not doing the same thing. So even though as a product we utilized it as an agency, it's not something that made a lot of sense necessarily to a lot of our clients. It's an add-on for our clients, which is a nice add-on to have. But it's not necessarily the same pipeline that we're looking at. So from a structural perspective, those are things we're always evaluating. But from a service perspective, I think they align so well because it's just another layer. Just like AI is going to become another layer, we're eventually going to have to decide, what are the layers that make sense and what are the layers that don't. And we're just looking at our clients right now to see, like, where is the world going? Where are their services going? Where are their expectations going? But acquiring a business, and maybe it's because I came from the mergers and acquisitions industry, I've found it kind of simple. It, I know it's complex and there's a lot that goes into it, but maybe I've just gotten really lucky with the acquisitions that we've done, that we are already very close, and it was very partner oriented and not quite like a private equity deal or something like that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think coming back to that's the focus part. You're right. We struggled before starting this business. I know when you're doing services and products together, totally different type of businesses. Selling is different. Everything is
Mhm.
different. So I'm glad you figured out, okay, two separate divisions or two separate departments, two separate companies, probably each has its own KPIs. When it
Mhm.
comes under one, suddenly the resource started sharing, and then the product is the one that usually gets hurt because services takes priority. And that's a common pattern that we see. I was listening to one of my early talks that I listened during the COVID was, I think the guy who wrote that um, one step, I believe. I forgot the name now. But the key part was like, you want to do one thing at a time. And he gives
Mhm.
some number, like if you reach at this, until you reach certain millions, you don't want to start two things. Otherwise, you will have a struggle. So,
That's really interesting because you look at, as a business owner, and I was a fairly new business owner, even though my husband already had his business. I was a new business owner when we acquired CauseLabs. I had already been in CauseLabs for so many years by the time we acquired it, but I was a new business owner. And it's interesting how much my mindset has shifted being a business owner, even from being a CEO to a business owner. It's totally different. And you the models that we have for business ownership are these large companies that have so many different divisions under them, so many different products, so many different services. And you don't think about the fact that they didn't have all those things from the beginning. And you may have experienced this in developing apps. Organizations that come to us and they say, well, what I want to build is like reinventing Facebook, let's say, I want all of these different things and people are going to use it because people use Facebook. So we expect them to use what we are building. And the reality is Facebook started with one thing, one core thing that it did. And you have to make it so easy that you build the brand loyalty and you do one thing really well. And then you layer things on and people adapt their behavior and start to use all the things that you offer to them. 3M didn't start with the number of patents that they have now. They didn't start with all of the different service lines that they have. And so I don't think, I mean, as business owners, we think we have to do all the things. As organizations that come to us and want to build technology, they think they want all of the things. And the same concept is true. Start with one thing.
Oh, very right. And we hear the same thing, like they want everything. And we tell them, pick one thing that would become your MVP, because if you make MVP as big, it's no longer an MVP. You want to build compete against the whole product that was built in
Mm-hmm.
years. So very right. So, and I do remember the name of the book that I said incorrectly before. It's One Thing by Jay Papasan.
Mm.
So, so he spoke to our chapter as well.
I don't think I've read that one.
Okay,
I'll have to read it. Thank
it's a
you.
really good book. So you've worn so many hats in your life: designer, soldier, executive, business owner, strategist, board member, community builder. There's so many. But when you zoom out, what is that one thread that ties all of these chapters together?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I think that's an evolving thread. Um, Initially, I think it was um, kind of my military upbringing of the world is full of opportunities to bring people together. And so I think that's why I ended up in translation. I ended up in the military specifically. I ended up being a soldier specifically because I wanted to be a translator. I actually walked into multiple recruiters' offices before I chose the Army, um, primarily because the Army said, well, yeah, we can guarantee that job for you. Um, they wrote it into my contract. However, it's always needs of the Army, and I had to pass multiple tests. It turns out I was able to pass it. I had the capacity and the capabilities for it. But um, I think that my goal there was just to be a better communicator and to bridge gaps between people. And I think that is probably part of my history as being an immigrant, being a little bit different, traveling around the world, seeing different perspectives, bringing people together was always really important for me. When I ended up in mergers and acquisitions, I don't want to say that I was at a stage of accepting any job. Um, the position that I got was primarily because I had been a stay-at-home mom for 7 years, and it was really hard to get back into the workforce when my resume only had volunteer work on it. And I had a woman at church, Karen, who trusted me and gave me a chance, gave me an opportunity. And I remember in the interview speaking with her saying, well, I work 40 hours a week for free for nonprofit organizations. What do you think my work ethic is when I'm actually getting paid? And I think that's why I succeeded in that company and kind of thrived in that environment. Um, but I don't know that I had any specific intention when I took that job other than I need stability for my family. I need something that will allow my husband to explore his new opportunities as he's getting out of the military, and that will still sustain my family and give them a better life than I had when I was growing up. When I got into CauseLabs, it was the first decision that I had made that was really, truly purpose driven. And it came back around to that communicating with people, bringing people together, and leveraging technology. This is where the evolution of my thinking came in, recognizing that technology had a lot of potential. When I got into it, it was kind of in the day and age of Congress really bringing the hammer down on tech companies because of all the negative consequences of social media and technology, all of the privacy issues that we're having with technology. And yes, all those risks exist, but there's always a silver lining to it too. There's so much good potential in technology. And this is the reason you and I are friends, because our companies are the same in that we find that good potential and we use technology for good. It's important because it is a part of our world these days. And we can use it to harm people or we can use it to help people. And I think it matters who you are as a company on whether or not you're going to harm or help. Some companies don't care and they're just going to build whatever you tell them to build. And they don't have, not that they don't have a conscience, but that's not their responsibility to guide you as a business towards something better, to recognize that there are risks involved with collecting certain information. But if you find the right partner and you find the right company, they're going to help guide your organization through some of these technology shifts and some of these risks.
Cool. Thank you. And I know I hear you talking about technology serving people rather than the other way around. So thanks for sharing that. And I will add one more towards the third question that I asked. That's impact. I personally see that everything you are doing is creating an impact, whether it's on the military or helping on a strategy side. You're creating a big impact in people's lives. So thank you for that. So continue with this last comment that you made. So many founders, many people struggle to align personal values with the business goals. How do you coach people to bridge that gap?
So I'm an EO member, and I know you are too. I've been a member of Entrepreneurs Organization for about 7 years now. And I've learned being a member of EO that business is never separate from personal and family. As a business owner, our business touches every part of our lives, but also every part of our lives touches our business. And it's this holistic picture, and you can't really silo them without something suffering. And so I think that that's some awareness that I have gained in becoming a business owner. But not everybody has that big picture. Of course, if they believe in integrity, they're probably going to be a leader that has integrity, and possibly expect integrity. But if they've never set that core value, then they're not making decisions based on that. They're not hiring and firing based on that. There is a lot that our personal values come into the culture of our organization just naturally. But the nature of business is still economic. And so sometimes it can shift our mindset. And I think that's what I saw when I was in mergers and acquisitions, when I was in due diligence. It was being too detached from the impact. It can shift your mindset. I think that's why I love the work that I do now, is because we aren't on the services side of things. We aren't just coding or designing what people tell us to build. We get to understand why they're building it. We get to understand who's using it. We get to help guide the direction of how they're going to use it and how this is going to help. And we get to co-create that. Um, Selling products for me has always felt very detached from that. And it's harder to infuse our values into that. I have learned from being a B Corp that there are organizations that do that. So, for example, Ben and Jerry's is an organization that sells ice cream, but you know what their values are because the names of their ice cream actually shout it at you, you know? And there's a lot of decisions that they make as a company that align with their values. I don't think that every company is that transparent. But when you build your brand around that, it makes a difference. It makes a difference in how the world sees you.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. So you worked on many projects that impacted millions of people. Can you share a project or a field moment, anonymously, obviously, that made you think this is why we do what we do?
Mm. Almost every single project has that moment. And I tend to surface that moment with the teams when we do our state of the labs, our quarterly or annual reviews. I ask the team to share their moments that they've had, partly because the work that we do is hard. And any work that anybody does, you know, is hard. It's easy to be detached from that impact. But when you find it, it's so important to voice that out loud. It's so important to say, this is why we do what we do. You know, we could be frustrated that they didn't answer an email for 5 days or that they went radio silent. We can be frustrated if a team member or ourselves has missed the mark on something. You know, there can be a lot of things during a project that happen that are just challenges we have to overcome. Um, but when you get to see the impact, when you get to experience it and say, this is why we do what we do, it's so amazing. Um, there's one project that we did in Vietnam, and it was kind of an R&D project. It was very challenging to identify the levers that we could pull to really work in rural regions, with all of the complexities and, at this point in time, the limitations of technology. But when it actually worked, it ended up that we were able to support a project and support a funding campaign that funded over 10,000 uh, sanitation spaces and latrines for rural homes in Vietnam, across multiple provinces. And I mean, that's a huge number. If you think about, wow, these were domiciles that didn't have clean water and plumbing and, you know, proper hygiene. And that impacts health, that impacts dignity, that impacts so much in those communities and in those families. And despite, you know, the challenges with code and limitations of internet and all of these other things, at the end of that, you can say, this is why we do what we do. And it's amazing to be able to look back on that and say, you know, I don't know what's happened with those families, but I know that they're better for it.
Oh, thanks for sharing. Really appreciate that. So AI. So let's start with how are you using AI in your business?
Oh, I use it every day. I use it in business. I use it in personal. Um, we have been using AI long before the surge of AI actually came about. You know, we've been using AI for image recognition. Um, we've been using it for, you know, generating alt text. We've been using it for challenge-based learning management system projects. So there's ways in which we've been using AI before this generative AI boom kind of started in 2022, 2023. Now, what people expect of AI is different than how we were using it before. I mean, interestingly, people, the general public believes that AI is this new thing. And yet those that have been in machine learning and in the AI space for a couple of decades now recognize there's nothing new about this. This is just the new evolution, and there have been a few companies that have made it, widely accessible to the general public. You no longer have to be a senior DevOps person to deploy this. You no longer have to be, a master developer to utilize these systems. Since that's happened, I've learned something new every day. I'm always reading a newsletter about AI. I am testing things. I have adopted AI in a lot of my marketing and a lot of my personal projects that I'm doing. As an organization, we're using AI to vet some of our leads. So some of the things that come in, it can automatically check things like size of organization, capacity to build something custom, alignment with using one of our products. Those are things that we've done. Externally, as far as deploying it for clients, we haven't jumped on that bandwagon. Other than, yes, we can give you the capacity to add AI to your web applications, to your web tools, but we're not building, as some companies are, kind of custom AI funnels right now. And part of that is what I was mentioning earlier about it's changing behavior. We don't quite know yet where the right investment should be. I think that the majority of the large organizations are going to be building AI into everything. So, for example, 2 years ago, AI could help you summarize your emails, but only if you use their API and built this custom version of it, right? Today, your Gmail is being summarized by Gemini. You could just click the little diamond arrow, icon. Everything's going to get built in eventually, and it's going to be a big part of the systems that we use every single day. We don't have to necessarily build custom systems. There's caveats to that, of course. Similar to, I said earlier, we're not going to build a mobile application for everybody because not everybody needs a mobile application. Not everybody can maintain a mobile application across 2 different platforms. And they don't necessarily recognize that they don't need it yet. The same with AI. Not everybody needs to build a custom AI platform. It is important to recognize as a business where it can be leveraged, and what exists out there that can be utilized, and what are the custom things that are unique and specific to you. Like proprietary knowledge, proprietary processes, it makes sense to build custom in that instance. But the general things, like I want something that automatically creates content for me, well, just connect it with Zapier, connect it with Make, use those automated workflows that already exist. Things are going, WordPress is already building in AI to where you can do things automatically. So those things are going to happen naturally.
Have you noticed any resistance from your employees or from clients in terms of leveraging AI? Because not everybody's on board, or everybody think, no, it's not mature, or it's not secure. All those reasons we do hear at different places. What resistance do you see in your company or with your clients?
So the majority of companies that have asked us questions about AI, we have said, well, we can do a training for your team. Because I think it's important for the team to get on board with this kind of transformation. Because if you are going to build AI, if you are going to build custom, or if you are going to adopt this as a more automated way to build out your processes, I believe a team should be involved in that. One, to comfort them that this is not necessarily going to replace them. It's going to enhance their capacity and capability. But two, so that they understand the trajectory of where the company is going and the transformation that's happening. And they honestly have the best ideas and the best awareness of the potential risks involved because they know the business. Um, I run into people saying, well, my team's not going to use it. They're not ready, or they're scared, or they're Luddites. They're just not tech savvy enough. Um, and I've tried to explain that it doesn't matter if they themselves are going to be utilizing the technology. I believe that they need to understand what's coming and how the technology is going to change the company and shift their processes and the things, their expectations, and the things that they're going to be doing. So that's one challenge that I've run into is that I think leaders are ready. They do not believe their team has the capacity. Um, and so that's a challenge because you can't evolve as an organization if you don't get your team on board. The other challenge that I've dealt with is people asking me, well, is that safe? I mean, is technology safe? I mean, to some degree, yes, you have to put measures around it. You have to put parameters. You have to be aware of the data that you're collecting. You have to have, parameters for compliance. You have to assess the risks. I mean, all of those things have always mattered with technology. AI is as safe as any other system that you're going to be interfacing with. It comes down to education of how you use it and the system that you build and the partners that you have in supporting you on that. Um, you know, I have said to people, it doesn't matter whether you're a tech company or any company these days. You should have cyber insurance. It's like it doesn't matter what kind of company you are. You should have cyber insurance because all of our companies touch technology to some degree at this day and age.
Yes, and I think important part is it's going to change whether you like it or not. There's no point of closing your eyes. Things will come, it's gonna just crush you. I tell my team a story about the blockbuster Babies R Us, Toys R Us. Not everybody remembers, like some are younger kids, so but in our age, so like those are more of our arrogance. Okay, nothing is gonna change, so nobody can change us. This is how we do it. And then suddenly, so now AI is going to change. So your jobs are going to be impacted, whether you like it or not. So you have a chance either to close your eyes or wait for that, or you get ready to compete. And that's the decision we made as a company that no, we're not going to sit back. We will invest. We will build our team, our capabilities, our tech, whatever, to get to the level so that we can compete and, in effect, be ahead of others. So that's
Mhm.
the mission. And we made it very simple, actually. We just started doing once a week all hands meeting. And we defined everybody's goal. Everybody put their own goals, quarterly goal, and then the task, like what they'll achieve. And they will share something every week. So gradually, once people started seeing that AI is actually not going to replace, but it's empowering them,
Mhm.
then that mindset changed because initial thinking is, oh, the AI is going to change and they have a resistance. But once you start seeing, oh, it's not going to change, it's actually letting me do more work. Oh,
Mhm.
now there is something. I was supposed to do 10 things and I was always doing 4 or 5. Now I can do 10.
Mhm.
Great. Now, because companies always have a higher KPIs most of the time, and now you are able to achieve those KPIs. So, um, I mean, I look at it. It's exciting time. It's scary as well, but I think it is the need of the time. Okay.
I think the other reason that we were early adopters was because we were raised in a generation where we adopted new things. I mean, we did transition from VHS to DVD to streaming technology, right? So personally speaking, when you mentioned Blockbuster, I thought of that. But also from an industry perspective, if you've been in design or you've been in technology for a while, we have transitioned to different coding methodologies, different languages. Like we're not coding in BASIC anymore, you know? And so we've seen the evolution of things so much so, and it has impacted our industry so much that I think it's easy to become an early adopter of something like AI and not be scared of it. Um, we recognize the huge transformation that's happening right now. You're right, it's not going away. We cannot put our head in the sand. But we do have to identify as an organization the different ways that we're going to leverage it or interface with it. Is it capacity building for our teams, or is it capacity building for our clients? Is it both? Um, I think there's a huge opportunity right now for people who are in tech, but I think there's also a huge resistance right now for some companies that are in tech because it's very easy for me to say, well, but that's not the right way to do it. um, AI didn't quite get that right, but you don't know as a lay user who doesn't use tech every single day that that's eventually going to break or that's going to be a security risk, you know? And so there is an acceptance right now of what people are willing to run with, even though it's not the right way. So we're kind of in that bridge right now of understanding where our skills are needed.
Cool. So we are out of time, but I'll ask two questions, 30-second each. So just tell us about your book. I want to give you this opportunity to promote like the world we know. So,
So the world we know was supposed to initially be a business book. I believe you said you interviewed Don Williams also on your podcast. He was
yes.
my writing coach, and he really taught me how to self-publish a book. And he said, start with your business book first. It'll give you credibility. It'll be good for both your personal brand and your company brand. And I said, okay. So I started working on a business book. But just the seasons of life. I think that what happened was I eventually ended up writing a book on perspective and the reality of how the world is shaped around us, both from our experiences and what we're fed in social media or on the news. And it's just a book on perspective. Um, I wrote it more for myself than for anybody else, but I finally clicked publish and put it out there for the world.
Cool. Cool. Thanks. What's next for CauseLabs and what's next for you? Any plans that you can share?
Absolutely. So, what's next for CauseLabs is really identifying what are the services that we can offer that are still relevant, especially as businesses are exploring AI. And like I said, that's probably more on the strategic side right now and helping them steward their investments. We are very much a savvy R&D team and can help with those things. And so we're exploring that and exploring with our clients how behavior is changing and what their customers really need in the future. And on the personal side of things, I'm writing another book. I don't want to share too much on that yet. I'm just in the beginning stages of that, and I'm doing a lot more speaking. So coming on podcasts like this, but then also just traveling more and speaking on different stages and sharing kind of the experience that I've had and where I've seen technology shift and change and where I think it's going.
Oh, congratulations on the second book.
Thank
Um,
you.
so looking forward to hearing from you. Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. Thanks for sharing all these nuggets. So before we leave, can you share for our listeners where people can find you if they want to contact you for anything?
Absolutely. Of course, they can find me at CauseLabs, CauseLabs.com. And so that is, where they can find all of our services and different products related to technology. But then also I've got a personal website, SherylGillihan.com. That's SherylGillihan. And I have a lot of my speaking content on there, some of my resources and blog posts, as well as some AI experiments that I've been doing kind of on the side that I make freely available to people.
Cool. Yeah, we'll sure to add these links in the podcast description. Thanks a
Wonderful.
lot, Cheryl. Again, it was so good to have you. Thanks for sharing all these golden nuggets to our listeners. Thanks everyone for listening. Lessons from the Leap. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lessons from the Leap podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll catch you next time.